Dennis Emidy, Dennis Emidi.
Okay. And what's your job title?
Uh, State Highway Safety Engineer.
Okay, sweet. Okay, cool. So, starting at a very high level with this this sort of project that you all came into. Talk about you talk about this progression that you all have been through. So, talk to me about where you all started in this kind of stuff.
Well, I think it all started with high crash locations. The state of Maine DOT has been using high crash locations, which is 8 or more crashes in a 3-year period with a critical rate factor greater than 1, which is basically you're experiencing more crashes than what you would expect at a similar type of intersection. So that term, high crash location, is everybody knows what that is. It's been around for probably 40 plus years, if not more. And so back in the 2000s, we were introduced to the Highway Safety Manual, which was great because the Highway Safety Manual allowed us to, where you have excess crashes, we're experiencing more crashes than what you would expect, but it wasn't based on 8 crashes in a 3-year period, which came into play when you have a road where there isn't much traffic on it, but it's experiencing more crashes than what you would expect. But it's not a high crash location, so therefore it's hard to justify doing something. So that opened up a whole new world for us with the the Highway Safety Manual, excess crashes, and especially and then when Jeff came along, we were doing we were looking at crashes. The Highway Safety Manual was great, but we would evaluate some places where there are excess crashes, and at the end of the day, we would have different potential projects, and we would kind of look at each individual, which one should we prioritize? Of course, we base it on the highest safety benefit to cost. But Jeff was able to, we should have this one higher because it's just based on the types of crashes and the speeds and the injuries. And so it kind of went above and beyond the Highway Safety Manual. And Jeff, in his brilliance, was able to look at all these different intersections and put them in spreadsheets that was just way beyond my ability, being an old timer. But so he was able to develop, what I knew from experience, he was able to put in priority. And so that's how he kind of, put a value to experience. That's the way I kind of look at it.
Or quantify it.
Quantify it, yes. Quantify that, we should do this intersection first because there's a lot of angle crashes, there's a lot of injuries compared to an urban section where there's a lot of rear ends or something. So, so it was really his idea. And the only thing I ever did was just allowed him the freedom to explore and grow, and that was kind of my that's all I did.
That's not nothing, by the way. That's because a lot of bosses wouldn't.
Right.
I want to hear that, like you said. This is not how we do this.
Right.
But total crashes are not total crashes are not total crashes. That's the thing, right? It just the raw number of crashes. And like Jeff was saying, you can have 30 rear end crashes, which is property damage only, versus 2 pedestrian crashes, but they're both fatals. Those are different things.
Exactly.
And so it sounds like you all have a much more sophisticated view or a way to look inside those numbers and add this other layer of analysis, which is severity and kinetic energy and the angles. That's the key.
That is, Yes.
So how's that changed your approach to prioritizing your money and your countermeasures and how you do projects?
Um, it's significantly improved the way we look at it. And it also helps justify doing something versus not doing something. When it's ranked, 11th in potential fatal and serious injuries, you need to do something. Doing nothing is not really an option. And, as I talked about earlier, we have a lot of opposition to certain projects. And knowing that there's likely to be a fatal or a serious injury, we really need to do something here.
And before, you weren't your engineering judgment, like your gut, would probably say something bad is going to happen there one day, but you couldn't prove it,
quantify it. Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
tell me how that feels to now have that validation of your engineering judgment and experience, but you can show it in an analysis.
It's great. Just the progression, like I said, from high crash location to the highway safety manual to this new methodology of Jeff's, potential fatal and serious injuries is just, I think it's wonderful.
And so a big part of your focus now is implementing, like getting the countermeasures on the ground. So talk to me about some of the specific countermeasures you're installing at these intersections and why.
When we look at when we identify the locations, we look at different countermeasures. We look at, we evaluate things on a safety benefit as well as a mobility benefit, and we'll look at, an always stop. We could look at an always stop. We could look at a traffic signal. We could look at a roundabout. Different. And what we do is when we look at these different alternatives, or changing, a skewed intersection to a T, teeing it up or splitting the intersection. We'll look at these different alternatives, see what the safety benefits are for each alternative as well. We'll look at the mobility impact, but the safety benefit is much higher in general than the mobility impacts. But we'll look at it all, and based on the available money, the incremental analysis of roundabouts are very hard to meet the safety benefit for. Even, and when it meets a benefit for a roundabout with the incremental analysis of, it costs a lot more money for a roundabout, is the incremental analysis justified for spending the extra money for a roundabout? Because, roundabouts are, ideal for the kinetic energy and reducing that kinetic energy, as well as an always stop. We're finding that the always stops are we're finding fantastic results of the always stops, conversions from two-way to all-way. And a lot of times, where we're looking at rural intersections, they don't have the volumes for a signal. And so and when we look at an always stop, the safety benefit is so high, the cost is so low. I mean, we have generally like 100 to 1 benefit to cost ratio. And thankfully, we are able to install these always stops with our maintenance forces. If it doesn't require any special treatment at this intersection, we do it with our maintenance forces. And I draw out, our section draws out the plans. I go out in the field, lay out where the sign should be, and I do everything out in the field. And we estimated roughly about $20,000 for an always stop. And, you know, what we do might be a little different from other states is that we put in the solar LED signs for 2 stop aheads and 2 stop signs, along with pavement markings, you know, stop ahead, stop bar, stop stencil. And oftentimes people complain about them, you know, going in and not ready for them. But as soon as they go in, the phone stop ringing for the most part, which is very good.
And just one of the great benefits of this analysis and this more sophisticated approach you're taking is a more systemic deployment of these low cost things. So instead of you can go around and spread out a $20,000 intersection treatment over lots of intersections and have 100-to-1 benefit on. That's good. That's great news.
Yes.
So talk about the ability now, based on this analysis, you have the quantified to go, okay, this is where we should put these low cost treatments, and we're spreading them out instead of just chasing crashes and doing hotspots along the way. So talk maybe the idea, because the systemic deployment of low cost treatments, just like you described, is a relatively new way of looking at all of this, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it is. Yeah, we've put a lot of always stops in over the last few years, and I mean there had been some in the past, but now we'll, given the data that we have within our own state and national studies, that we're putting in some always stops where people would, probably never would have thought before.
That's what I mean. Is that it's letting you, based on data and choices, where people you're doing them preemptively, right? Like proactively. You're getting out there. You don't wait for somebody to die to make a treatment.
Right. And yes. Yeah, that's what we're trying to prevent, is someone dying. And yeah, I'm just thrilled at how effective they are. Even this, a simple $20,000 fix and I don't know if I mentioned this, but we purchased the LED signs through HSIP funds, and then like I said, our maintenance forces install them. And it's a little challenge though to get this, the sign crew out there, the striping crew, the stencil crew, the flaggers, all there at the same time. So there's a little, it is a little challenge to get everybody, because maintenance forces are very busy themselves. But we went out to bid on some of these projects, and it was just like, instead of $2,000, it was like almost $200,000 to put in an always stop. Just doesn't make any sense, so.
So you mentioned as a guy who's been around a while, having an older dog who's come out of this thing, but you've seen the Jeffs of the world and seeing the direction this is going. Where do you see all this going? As a guy who has a longer perspective than certainly Jeff, who's very young, looking at this, sort of thinking of where you started your career and where this is going.
When I first started, I didn't even have a computer at my desk. Okay. When I started in highway design, I didn't even have a computer on my desk. And what Jeff and OIT has been able to do is put all these crashes and all this the HSS we call it a HSS, the Highway Safety Manual, put it all on our network, so people can see it right there in Map Viewer. Now Jeff is able to put the K&A on there, and I'm able to, putting it all on the computer, putting it all in, how long it takes to do a roadway segment using the Highway Safety Manual. It takes a very long time, and we've been able to automate it so you can just say what point A on route 111 or to point B, where do we have excess crashes along this route? Where is that? And it's amazing. What took hours is now minutes. So we're going in the right direction, and as far as putting this all in all this data, all these numbers, so that people can visually see what's going on. Where's the hot spots? You could easily see where that is.
That was a great way to say that. What used to take hours now it takes minutes. Yeah. That's a nice closer to the video.
Yeah, it's
anything I haven't asked you about this work, or about, like, if you had a peer, somebody like you in another state, in Nebraska or something, what would you tell them about this process? And maybe is not as far along as you all are.
I think what separates Maine from a lot of other states is that we do have the crash data. We know where crashes are. We know where they are. Every crash that's in the state of Maine is located by people in our section. And they read the police report, they get the description, and they mark it right in the network. We're very, very fortunate that we have this crash data. Many states don't. And I think that's what separates having the crash data, the roadway data is sure, there could be always improvements to the roadway data, but we have something, and that allows us to combine the crash data with the roadway data and have the ability to use these high, better way of analyzing what's going on. I'm very blessed that we have the crash data, and that's a priority, that we identify where those crashes are, and that we do get another person in our section make sure, like, why is this, if there's a department that doesn't seem to be having crashes, they'll contact them. It's like, you seem to be lower than normal for crashes, and we have that working relationship with the police departments and state police and stuff like that. I think that's where Maine is very fortunate.
You are, because we work with states all over the country. That's a struggle. It's like they say all this data analysis is awesome, but we don't have the data, or we don't have great data, or how can we work better with law enforcement and EMS and even schools and people who know they're on the ground. They know where crashes are happening that might not be reported, especially in rural areas.
Right.
People are going to run off the road, go off into the trees or the cornfield or whatever. They aren't going to call the cops. They're just going to drag their truck out of the ditch and call their buddy with a winch, and
Right.
Some of the stuff is just you have to get on the ground to really know where things are.
Yeah, and we hear that once in a while, like, hey, I had this recently. It's like, this curve is really bad, and it's like, our data's not showing it. And that's exactly what you were saying, is that they, but the fire departments were called out, and so they had that record. So, but there wasn't enough to bump it up to.
So you are very fortunate, because a lot of states struggle with it. Even way bigger states than you struggle with it, especially in their more rural areas. It's just harder to capture that stuff. But Good. Anything else I haven't asked about, or this is?
No,
You
I
just did your first interview.
thanks.
You still breathing?
No blood?
No blood, like,
No blood. No, no. It's just yeah, like I said, we're very fortunate to have this great data. We have a great relationship with OIT to, what we've done on horizontal curve stuff, and it's amazing. It's truly amazing. I hope Jeff shows you the graphics, because to me a picture says a million, says 1,000 words or whatever that saying goes.
it's on our list for him to show that.
Yeah, because that's you see, when you see little red dots on the map, okay, there's a problem there, and nothing like a red dot,
Yep.
That's
when you know that the data back it up, like this, like he was talking about this sort of, it's almost like an equation of everything. It accounts for all these different things and weights them differently, and like that's super advanced.
right.
Did you said you go in and talk to people that are going to implement this stuff? Like you go in and talk to commissions and
to like
city
towns.
managers. And
Oh
all
yes,
that
I
stuff?
talked to the towns.
How long have you been doing that?
Too long.
So is there a difference now? Like when you go into them now and you have all this stuff that you can show them, is there a difference?
Oh, yeah,
Well,
yeah. So
I think on I don't get into the details with them because they wouldn't understand it anyway. You just have to talk very simple language as much as possible. If you get into, this is, get into the highways, no one's going to understand that. So the trick is to
translate it. It's a translation.
to make it as simplified as possible, but without getting into too many details. And that's a challenge. That's a big challenge to
And it got to be frustrating because you have the data to show what you're doing.
Yes, and it can be frustrating when they say, "I don't care what your data says. That's not going to work here." And it's like, and then you have to show them examples. And there's nothing like giving somebody examples. It's fine to give them examples, nationwide studies, but when you have the data in Maine, they know the intersection. Hey, this used to be $4 million worth a year in crash experience. Now it's down to $150,000 in crash. It's great to have. And the hard part was getting the numbers for in-state. Having those first few sites, and that was getting the results in Maine makes a big difference. So, Dennis, Emidy, we're in Casco at the intersection of Route 11 and 121.
Check levels and then okay. So tell me about this intersection. What's the problem here?
This was a high crash location that had had a long history of being having a crash problem, and this is our first modern always stop that we installed, and
Reservations about it.
we this was our first always stop. There was a lot of I had a little concerns about it, putting in an always stop, but after watching the traffic, after it was installed and watching the traffic, I was converted as to how well the traffic behaved after changing it from a two-way to an always stop.
Because the fear was they weren't going to stop. They were so used to going so fast here, right?
Right. The fear was that the cars were going to continue at high speeds through the intersection, but with the flashing stop aheads and the flashing stops on both sides of the roads and the pavement markings, the people that didn't have the stop before were stopping fine.
You have a fire truck going behind you. It's like perfect. So do you have data on this on
Yes.
after data?
Yes, we do have the data.
So what was the situation here before? I don't need the exact numbers, but it was pretty bad. This was top of your list, right?
This was like one of the top spots in the state where, you know,
That dump truck is a little bit too loud.
Jeff, do you remember the numbers?
Don't worry so much about the numbers, but this one, when you did your network screening, you did the network screening after this, right? But you're saying this, if we had this would have ranked very, very high in your network screening. So we had 5 KNA crashes. 3 of them were just before. Okay.
Yeah, this is a site that had a lot of had 5 KNA crashes before the change, and after we converted it, there was just property damage and 2 people complaining of injuries. So the crashes have drastically reduced.
And the severity of
And the severity of crashes.
This one was the big number was
This
98% reduction in crashes. Okay.
okay, 98. I couldn't remember. I have it.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, because we had a few big strikes go in a row.
Yeah.
If you would start that kind of thought again, say before we had 5 KNA crashes, and then after this we've had a 98% reduction in severe crashes. Even that idea is such a big deal.
Yeah. Before the conversion, there was 5 KNA crashes. Afterwards, there's been a 98% reduction in crashes, and we've seen the crash cost go from $4 million to less than $200,000 for the 3 years afterwards. This was one of our worst intersections before we converted. There was like 5 A and B, 5 fatal and serious injury crashes before. And due to the reduction in crashes and severity, we've seen a 98% reduction in crash costs at this location.
That was good.
I'm going to let this go by, and then I have one more thought I want you to...
You go up there so it's easier to hear.
This was not going to be numbers. It's more like what we were talking about over there. To say, hey, Jeff and I came out here before. This was one of our most dangerous intersections, and we did this treatment. But when we came back after, like this changed my whole view of 4-way stops because we could see the traffic was responding so well. So just that kind of thought. Look at cigarettes and yeah. Okay, I think it's just cars. So at this point, so that idea that this is one of our worst intersections, but when we came back out here after and we sat here and watched it for an hour and we saw how traffic was responding, that changed my whole view of these 4-way stops.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
It was just like we were talking about over there where you said this was one of our worst
Oh, yeah.
intersections. But when we did this treatment, and we didn't know if it's going to, how well it was going to work, but we came back out here, we sat here for an hour and watched traffic.
Yeah.
And it was responding. It's like it changed my whole view of these things. Yeah.
So like I said, this was one of our worst intersections. And when Jeff and I came out and watched the traffic for about an hour, this changes my whole thought process on always stops, and the traffic behaved so well with the change from a 2-way to an always stop. Oh shit.
We can use it. We can use it. Try to mitigate the background.
Because this is not going to stop. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
right when he started getting good, that truck took off. That was great. He nailed it. Yeah, he nailed it.
But every time I think we have a break, we end up.
Yeah,
with
let's just
some
try
intro.
one more time and then we're done.
All right, let's do that one more time. That thought, and let's just see if we can. Yeah, but that was it's fantastic.
You're good.
This is one of our worst intersections. And once it was converted to an always stop, Jeff and I went out and observed it, and it totally changed the way I look at always stops. And I was amazed at how well the traffic behaved afterwards.